Alrighty, so today we're going to talk about the other Ohio team and the team that, of course, won MLS Cup. That is the Columbus Crew. So obviously, the Columbus Crew they are looking to trying to defend their MLS Cup crown and are looking to become the first team to do so since we saw the Galaxy did it back in 2011 and 2012. But also at the same time, pretty sure the Columbus Crew will know what happened in 2021 and that after that triumph in the 2020 season, we know that they cannot have a similar kind of season like what we saw in 2021, where if you want to talk about MLS Cup hangover and whether if it's a real thing in MLS or not, the 2021 Columbus Crew season is a prime example of an MLS Cup hangover. But that being said, in terms of last season, as I mentioned, they won MLS Cup with a 16-9-9 record and they finished with 57 points. Their last playoff appearance, I mean, it's last year. Their last playoff round wins, it's last year. And then in terms of MLS Cup, so besides winning it in 2023, they won it in 2020, and then their first triumph was back in 2008. Now, in terms of some of the signings that they made this offseason, now they've been relatively quiet in terms of the transfer market in the off season. But that's okay because when you look at this Columbus Crew team, it's a pretty stacked team, and that it is pretty clear that they are definitely running it back heading into next season. But they definitely got at least a couple of key signing. Obviously, the biggest key signing is bringing Mariano Hernandez from Liga MX, and from what I heard, it seems like he's probably going to be the replacement for Julian Gresso that they lost this off season. But they also promoted Taha Herbrum from the Columbus Crew 2 team, and something tells me he's going to be a great player because Columbus Crew 2 is a team that, not only has been a really good team in the MLS Next Pro, I mean, they appear in multiple MLS Next Pro championship game before, but it's also been proven that they've been providing a lot of good talented player from their MLS Next Pro team. But they also got Derek Jones to join this team off a free agency. Now, in terms of players that's leaving this team, obviously the biggest name is Julian Gresso, now with Inter Miami, and that was definitely a difficult decision for Columbus. Whether or not if they're going to decide to keep Julian Gresso or not, but they decided to let him walk, and we'll see whether that is the right decision. Especially if Hernandez shows that does live up to the expectation, I think it is still the right decision to do so, and consider Gresso has not he's kind of been an interesting kind of player where he's been a very good player in MLS, but he's kind of becoming a bit of a journeyman with the way that he's been joining a lot of teams and bounce around the league for the past couple of years. But they also lost Luis Diaz, Jake Morris, Keegan Hughes, Jimmy Madronda, Isaiah Parenta, Josh Williams, Brady Scott, and Gustavo Vallecilla as the numerous player that is no longer with this team. Now, in terms of their preseason schedule, and I had to double check this because on the league website, it seems like the only preseason game that they're going to be playing is against Toronto FC on February 10th. And that I've also checked on the Columbus Crew website. I mean, they said that they're going to be playing some preseason game, but they don't exactly tell us what opponent it is. And they've also talked about how they've been doing some preseason training, so on and so forth. So yeah, they haven't really been active in terms of playing competitive games in the preseason. Well, I'm going to say competitive game because these are still just preseason exhibition game. But that being said, they are going to be one of the 10 teams that's going to be in the CONCACAF Champions Cup because they're the defending champ, and because of the fact that they're the defending champ, they get to skip first round of the CONCACAF Champions Cup. In fact, these next couple of teams I'll mention is teams that are going to be directly into round number 2 or the round of 16 in the CONCACAF Champions Cup. And unfortunately for Columbus, this is the same thing I said about Houston and St. Louis in the season preview. One of the thing about the CONCACAF Champions Cup is that you want to face against teams not in MLS, but maybe in other region in Central America or even a Liga MX team. And unfortunately, Columbus won't get that choice, at least for the round of 16 matchup. They get the winner of the Houston Dynamo or St. Louis City, and the first leg will be actually on the road where they play the winners of Houston versus St. Louis, and in the second leg they get to play at home at Lower Dog Field to face against the winner of the Houston Dynamo and St. Louis City. Now, when you look at the first 10 games for the Columbus Crew, and because of the fact that their first game in the CONCACAF Champions Cup won't start until March number 6. They're pretty much going to start the season like everybody else in MLS, and this is where we start to get to the part of the season preview where pretty much every team from now on of the season preview will start exactly at the same time. Well, actually, except for Inter Miami, that is. Of course, they get the honor to kick off the 28th MLS season by playing their first game against RSL on February 21st. But for Columbus, of course, like everybody else, they're going to be starting their season on February 24th. And what a start of a season this is going to be. Like, they're going to be playing against Atlanta United in their first game. And I guarantee you that out of all these season opener matchup that we're going to see on the opening weekend, I'm definitely going to be circled that on my calendar as a must watch, because if you know one thing about Columbus and Atlanta game, especially from what we saw last year in the playoffs, man, they were just entertainment at its highest. I mean, it was crazy of how we see those games. Very similar to how El Trafico is, where just pretty much no breaks, but all gas, and that whole team likes to attack, and I will not be surprised if we're going to see tons of goals in that matchup, and once again see some high octane affair where basically midfield doesn't exist. Both teams just want to attack. And then they, of course, go on the road to play against Minnesota on February, or not February, but March 2nd. That is. That's actually the season opener for Minnesota. But after that, they play against Chicago at home before they play at home against the New York Red Bulls. Then they go on the road to play against Charlotte before playing against Nashville SC. Then they return home to play against DC United before going on the road to play against RSL. And they got a home date against the Portland Timbers before on April 27th to round up the first 10 games. They're going to be playing at home against Montreal. So yeah, relatively an easy schedule for the defending champion. Like all these teams that they're going to be facing are teams that didn't make the playoffs, or at least there are some teams that made it to the playoffs, but teams that you would expect the defending champion Columbus Crew should be able to beat them. Well, obviously, except when they're forced play on the road, because the road form obviously has been an issue for Columbus, and while it wasn't as much as what we saw in the playoffs, I mean they did had to win in that Eastern Conference Final game to make it to MLS Cup, and also win the Eastern Conference second round matchup against Orlando City to even get a chance to play in that Hell is Real derby against FC Cincinnati. But in terms of regular season, they're still not really a good road team. Now, in terms of the post Leeds Cup, and the first game that they're going to be playing in the post Leeds Cup is not going to be easy whatsoever. They get the Philadelphia Union to start off. In fact, the first three games that they play post Leeds Cup is going to be tough. Again, this just goes back to what I said about, for some reason it seems like the league is trying to put some of these best teams to have tough schedule after the Leeds Cup or near the end of the season is over. But after that, as I said, after the Union game, they play against NYCFC at home, and then we have the Hell is Real derby on the 14th. By the way, the first Hell is Real derby, or at least one of the three Hell is Real derby, is going to be after this game between Columbus and Montreal. But the second one, or at least the last one that is, because I think there's going to be three of them this year. The last one, of course, is going to be on September 14 when they go on the road to face against FC Cincinnati. Then they go on the road to face against Toronto FC before returning home to face against Orlando. Then they go on the road to face against DC United. Then they return home to play against Messi in France against Inter Miami. Then they face the Philadelphia Union again on October 5th before on their decision day matchup, they're going to go on the road to face against the New York Red Bulls. So again, there are some easy teams that they could win, but there are also some really tough teams that they're going to have to face in the post league break. Definitely much harder schedule compared to what we see in the first 10 games, where they have a relatively easy schedule to come out the start of the season. So what is the strength for this Columbus team? I mean, it's obviously the attack and also the depth on this team. I mean, just like the 2021 team, I say that this team pretty much are too deep in every single position, and they have some quality depth everywhere. But the attack, I mean, what can you say about this team? Last season, Wilfred Nancy and the Nancy ball is the reason why they were able to finish with the top goal scoring record out of any team in MLS, and with the way that they're bringing back the likes of Christian Ramirez, Cucho Hernandez, Diego Rossi, and all those players. Yeah, this is going to be a dangerous team heading into next season too, and don't be surprised they're going to be scoring more goals next season too. Now, obviously, the big weakness of this team is going to be the MLS Cup hangover, and I still feel like defense is going to be a bit of a weakness for this team. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that that's how Nancy ball, of course goes, because Nancy ball requires teams to push man forward, and they do leave themselves exposed at the back at time, and this is where I think next season we might see some teams will start to find some adjustment to how Nancy ball play, and this is where I even talk about Wilfred Nancy of how we'll see whether or not if he does make adjustment if teams are starting to figure out how to work, because eventually while Nancy ball was very effective last season, teams are going to start figuring out a solution, and really the solution for you to face against this Columbus team is simply if you can hit them on the counterattack and caught them napping at the back with a fast transition, then you can breach that Columbus defense. So that's going to be something that they're going to have to be aware of, and this is also where maybe Wilfred Nancy might be dialing it a little bit back if teams are going to start using that as a way to attack his defense. Now, obviously, the expectation for this team, I think they're going to have to try to go to win the CONCACAF Champions Cup. I mean, obviously, they won MLS Cup, but I'm pretty sure they're looking to try to win the CONCACAF Champions Cup and maybe could be a favorites as well. They're pretty much in the same situation I said about LAFC last season, where they finally were able to win MLS Cup. Now they're going to go for the next big prize, which is the CONCACAF Champions Cup, and we'll see how far they, of course, will go. I mean, in their last time that they went through this competition, yeah, unfortunately, I mean they were able to win their first game relatively easily, and then they meet probably one of the killers of Liga MX, but that is Monterrey. I mean, besides Tigres, Monterrey and Rayados, those two Monterrey teams, I mean, they're just absolute killers of MLS team. MLS team always tends to have a hard time in terms of trying to solve them in the CONCACAF Champions League, and it's going to be the same thing this time. If they do face against those teams, they're going to have to conquer them to maybe get themselves deep into the competition. But I think the other thing that is an expectation for this team is just have a good showing in the playoffs. I mean, I don't expect this team to defend their crown, and I've said this before in my moving forward series talk about the Columbus Crew, where as much as I know they have a roster that can run it back and basically get themselves back to MLS Cup, it's not going to be easy, and it's not going to be easy. And in some way, I even openly said that I don't think it's going to happen, mainly because the East is just so strong this season. Like the East, they are going to be one team that everybody's going to have their target on them, because they're the defending champion. They're the one to beat, and it's going to be interesting to see how Columbus will handle that. And again, going back to the MLS Cup hangover, it is definitely a real thing. You could maybe see some of these players kind of having a slow start to the season, like what we saw in the first try, or actually not the first try, but the second try after winning MLS Cup. So yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see how they would do. There's no doubt that I think they're going to make it to the playoffs, but I think if they don't win MLS Cup, I don't think Columbus fan will be that disappointed, because they won it last year too. I mean, they have to be kind to the rest of the East, have allowed the other team to win the trophy as well, but also just most importantly having a good showing in the playoffs. I mean, this is kind of the good thing about winning a championship. Once you get that weight off your shoulder, and once you reach the pinnacle of whatever MLS team trying to do, the pressure at least will be wear off, at least for a year or two, and definitely the pressure will be off of Wilfred Nancy. The fact that they done it, they reached the pinnacle, and now it's all about if they can defend. I mean, if they can't defend, then it's okay, because 11 other teams before the Galaxy repeated the last time is in 2011 and 12 is kind of the only team that have repeated in a very long time. But there you have it. That is pretty much it. Looking at the Columbus Crew in terms of their season preview. Let me know in the comments below, what do you think of this video? And if you're a Columbus Crew fan, what do you think is the strength, the weakness, and what's your expectation heading into this season? But till then, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys leave a like, smash the subscribe button, and yeah, I of course will see you guys next time.